Hey up everybody, welcome back to the I'll Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be taking a look at the VELOGAMES Ruta del Sol. Of course there will also be a preview for the Volta Algarve, so be sure to check that out. I'll put a little thumbnail card at the end of the video. But Ruta del Sol, arguably of two races available, this is the harder one to try and make a team for, just because there's that lack of quality riders in the 6 and 4 point categories. So we're obviously going to be taking a look at the most expensive riders first, and that does start with Tadej Pogacar at 28 credits, which is very worthwhile still taking, let's be honest with you, because Pogacar could very well win all the stages. When you look at the profiles on PCS or whatever platform you use, a lot of the stages outside of stage 1 are very punchy finishes. And I think stage 1 will be the GC decider, and then the other stages could very well be for maybe a breakaway or maybe some punches, etc. So Pogacar really fulfills a lot of the stages, and I think he's almost a must-have that has to go into every single team. I'm not sure if it's worthwhile leaving him out and trying to spread your points out more evenly, just because I think that he is going to be such a dominant force in this race. Enric Mas, on the other hand, at 22, I definitely think don't take Pogacar and Enric Mas, because that's 50 credits worth. So that's half of your team in 2 riders, and I don't think that they will make up half of your team's points that you accumulate. So I'd probably avoid Mas, especially considering that there's Guerrero here as well, who personally I favour as the more punchy rider. And Guerrero's also just won Saudi Tour as well, so I think that he would be the safer option of the 2 Movistar riders. You got the Ineos duo of Carlos Rodriguez and Tao Geoghegan Hart. Of the 2, I prefer Tao just because of how they respectively looked at Valenciana. Tao Geoghegan Hart just looked to have a bit more snap at the end of the hills, a bit punchier, a bit of a faster sprint. Whereas Rodriguez, I'm not sure if he suits this style of racing that's going to be happening in Valenciana. Lots of short, sharp efforts. There aren't those long mountains, which he is more accustomed to. So I think that Tao is probably the better choice of those guys. Then you got Landa, who suffers in a similar extent to Carlos Rodriguez, which is that there just isn't that hilltop finish at those mountains, which Landa's really good at. There's a lot of punchy finishes, and I think that somebody like Hay could be the better choice for Bahrain, for example. Caruso didn't do anything at Valenciana, so I'm not expecting him to do much here, in all honesty. Bernal, kind of ditto for him as well. I think that he'll be working for Tao still. So that's sort of what I think of the most expensive riders. Covey's an interesting one, moving into the 12-point riders, because Covey could get his own opportunities when you consider that Pogacar could easily put the GC to bed on stage 1, and then UAE could work for other riders throughout the week. I think it's certainly a possibility that Covey could be allowed his own possibilities in stages, especially since he won a stage here last year on, I think, on the same finish as there is on stage 2 or 3, I think it was, up that kind of cobbled and sharp finish up to the finish line. So I think Covey could be a good one. Pierre Latour's done pretty well at Etoile de Bessèges recently, so obviously in good form. I think that he would be one which a lot of people would glance over. Perhaps definitely worth thinking about Latour, because he could very well finish inside the top 10 in my eyes. Dylan Teuns, according to Israel's press release, seems to be their GC rider, despite the fact that he didn't do that great at the Etoile de Bessèges. They also have a lot of other great riders who I'll be going over soon. One of those is Michael Woods. However, I wouldn't pick Woods just because I haven't seen much of him in the last year or so. So probably just avoid Woods, in my opinion. Moving into the 10-point riders, there are lots to choose from. We'll start off with the Israel guys again. Of course, we've got Simon Clark and also Corbin Strong. Both of these guys are in such great form, but they fulfill a very similar niche, so it's hard to differentiate which one they'll be going for on either stage. Maybe they'll just alternate, I'm not really too sure. Although they have specifically said that, well, Simon Clark has said that he thinks this is too hard for GC for him on that first stage. So definitely just expecting stage hunting prospects out of these two. I think you could pick either one, to be honest with you. You might just have to get a bit lucky as to which one you choose for which one's going to be getting the most points out of them. In terms of the bad riders here, I'd probably just avoid the UAE guys. I know I was talking about Covey getting his own chances, but the likes of George Bennett, Micah and Vellen's probably not great choices in my eyes. The Movistar guys very similar because they've got Guerrero and Mas. How much will Cortina or Serrano get their own opportunities? I think it'll be pretty limited for them. Mohoric could get his own chances, considering that he's probably the fastest rider that Bahrain victorious have in this race. Oldani, a very versatile sprinter, could very well compete in 4 stages, I reckon, in all honesty. And then outside of them, Dion Smith as well could be a decent one for Intermarché. 8-point riders, I think my favourite one is Samuele Battistella, because he's looked pretty good recently. Remember in that last stage of Valenciana, he looked quite good. Probably the best rider that Astana have in this race, and given the number of puncher type finishes, I think that Battistella fulfills a lot of those, and I think that he would be a great addition to anybody's team. Outside of him, there aren't too many which I like the look of, apart from Andreas Klon, who did pretty well in the Jean Pastelio Interior race, so he would be likely the best rider for Lotto Destiny going into this race. And also Lorenzo Rota and George Zimmerman were up there in that race as well, so they would also be good choices for your teams. I wouldn't really consider anybody else in all honesty. The 6-point riders, this is where, like I said, there is quite limited opportunities in terms of riders here, but in terms of my favourite ones, maybe Bonifacio for a sprint on that final day. In terms of like a breakaway rider, Boo was in some of the breaks in Valenciana. Carretero could be a GC option for Equipo for Kern Farmer, but probably not very likely. Joe Dombrowski is a GC option. I'm a big fan of Pascal Acorn. He seems to have really turned a new leaf since joining Lotto Destiny from Jumbo Visma, so I think that he could really contest in one or two stages, certainly that last stage, and maybe one or two others, possibly if he's given his own chances over Andreas Klon. So Acorn I'm a big fan of for this race. You could also say Fabio Feline, Omar Fraile for the assist points. Perhaps he might get his own chances as well. Probably not likely, but you know, you can always hope. Pernsteiner and Puccio again for the assist points. You've got Zambanini as well for assist points, but he's also pretty good. He might get his own chances or finish quite high up in GC. And then there would also be Christian Scaroni, who's another pretty good rider for Astana. And then in terms of 4-point riders, there's Igor Alieta, who's a very promising Spanish talent. Did very well in the junior ranks, but of course hasn't quite hit the heights yet. That has been sort of hyped around him. Perhaps this could be the race where he really breaks through, although his recent results don't really reflect that, so perhaps just watch out for that. You've also got Raul Garcia Piena, who is the current Spanish time trial champion, so he could be a good one as well. Did okay at the Etoile de Bessèges. And then outside of him, Samitier for the assist points for Movistar could be a decent one. Harry Sweeney is in here, but I'm not sure if he's taking part, so just double check the start list before you go selecting him. But if he is in the race, I think that he would be a really good one, arguably possibly the best 4-pointer. I could see him certainly getting in breakaways quite a lot. And that's pretty much it. As I said, there's quite limited opportunities in terms of the 6 and 4-point riders, so it's quite difficult to create a really strong team. And I think that Pogacar is going to be the absolute must-have, but outside of that, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be down to who can pick the right stage hunters. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. And all that's left to say is to keep safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!